Welcome everybody to the next session here. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, this session is a next stop, a tour of the new self-service. So without further ado, I want to introduce Drew and Tim, who are going to kind of take us through the new self-service. Why don't you give them a hand and welcome them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for joining JNUC 2017. As he said, this is the product-led session on the new self-service for macOS. I am Drew Manner, product owner at Jamf, and with me today is Tim Fisher, senior software engineer, and we both have been privileged to work on this new application that we're about to show you today. With that, I'd like to start out with why did we actually create a Jamf Self Service. As you can see, we wanted to transform the IT and end user experience, being able to empower that end user with instant access to content that they need and giving them the resources they want when they want it. And then in the end, providing that streamlined, easy to use tool that allows them, again, to get that content when they want it without you having to go to IT for it. With that, let's kind of just begin with the new UI. We received a lot of feedback about self-service and the UI and what we can do with it. And just here's just a quick little few screenshots to see the evolution of the new self-service throughout the iteration to where we are today. And with this, we had a focus group back in 2015 to help us identify priorities for this new application and be able to carry those out. With that, our UX team was involved creating prototypes and doing some user testing to help us create this foundation that we have today and be able to iterate on that in the future. So actually, to get started, can we flip over to the demo computer, please? Thank you. First, we'd like to just give a quick walkthrough of the new self-service, where things are laid out, and then we'll kind of do more of a deeper dive into some of the features and enhancements we have made. As you can see, it is a modern app. As mentioned before, it is written in all Swift. It's a new look, but familiar for the end users. To start out with, we have a toolbar at the top with three main tabs: library, history, and updates. These are always available, so they can always have access to this content for them, and again, familiar for the end user. Also, we also have the dedicated notification icon upper in the right-hand corner. The user can click on that, see a drop-down of the notifications, and they'll be able to see new and older notifications, as well. The note is that this icon does not disappear for the end user when there is no notifications available, so they'll always have access to that. Another part is the search. They'll be able to search on items and bookmarks, but let's just take a quick second here to search on anything Apple and just to see what happens. As you can see, what populated was a bookmark as well as an item available, so they will have that. If we can switch back then to the library, with that we also have the account button where the user can log out and if they're using authentication. And then if we flip back as well, move down towards the left part of the application as we have this left pane. Here is where you'll see all the categories available for that end user. We also included the bookmarks at the very top, separated by a divider there. And we also included an all category that is there. So if they want to just see everything that is available for them based on those categories, they actually switch there and see everything there. Also, then with the right pane, based on the category you select, as you can see, it does modify and show all the specific content available on the right side. If you want to dig a little bit deeper, the user can click on the icon or the information button of an item, and this is where you will see a description pop up. With this, as you can see, there's nothing being cut off anymore. If there's a lot of information, as you see, Tim, you can scroll up and down. Also, we have that nice, easy to find close button at the bottom left-hand corner, as well as you can install it there on the right. And just another note, too, as this app is a responsive app, so you can adjust the window the way you want it to as the end user, and all the information is adjusted. And again, you don't have to worry about icons or anything like that being cut off as well. If we can, we flip back to the keynote, please. Perfect. We've been talking about it in a few sessions already. We all know that you want to be able to brand self-service. It makes sense. It was in the top 5 feature requests on Jamf Nation, which leads to what can you actually brand. If you missed some of that today, we'll kind of walk you through those areas and then actually do a live demo to see that in action. So to start out, we have the branding icon by default that is set up as the self-service logo. If you wanted to change that out, you could show something like this. We're using the Acme logo. Also next to that is we have the branding name. By default, as you can see, it is set up as self-service, but if you wanted to change that, you can. And with that, you would see, for example, we're using Acme Technologies Employee Tools and Resources. Here you can see you can leverage a main and secondary header, but it is your choice. You can just have one or add the second as well. The other thing to note is that the branding icon and name that we're showing here is also reflected on the login page. So if you do use authentication, this is what the login page would look like by default. Enter their credentials here. We also added the Remember Me checkbox. If they would like to store their information, they'd be able to click that checkbox, and then it'll store that for them. But then to get back again to branding, if you decided to brand the icon and the name, it would show up something like this for your end users. And there's one other area that you can brand. It is the branding header. By default, it is set up as this darker image, and it actually goes underneath the toolbar as well. But if you did want to change that out with a different image, you can do that, and it would look something like this. And then just to note, if you actually wanted to leverage all three areas of branding, your end user could see something like this with the icon, the name, as well as the header. There was a question asked in the previous session about sizing. And so in Jamf Pro, we'll see shortly that it does give a recommendation, but for the branding or the branding image in the background, it's 1500 by 500. And then also the icon, you can also find that in Jamf Pro as well. But hopefully, as you can see with this new branding, it allows you to make your organization, or with self-service, make this your organization's tool, not a Jamf tool. But let's flip it over to Tim's demo computer so we can actually see this in live.
All right, well, like Drew said, we have a lot of branding customization options available to you. And right now, as I showed when Drew was talking, this is what you get out of the box. We think it looks pretty good, but we think you would probably like it to look more like your organization. And I just want to show you how easy that is to do. So first thing I'm going to do is bring up the Jamf Pro web app. And this should be pretty familiar. Go down to your self-service settings. And we have a brand new tab called Branding. And in this tab, you get a little preview of what your end users will see when they launch self-service. And as you see, it shows the dark header, the generic self-service icon, and the generic self-service text. Assuming you have some icons and some header graphics made up by your marketing department or whatever, all you need to do is, we can click on Edit, and you'll see you have a branding icon and a branding header. The easiest way to do this is just drag them right in, or if you prefer, you can click on the respective browse link and you'll get the standard file browse. But I'm going to go ahead and have an icon right here. I'm going to drag that over, and you'll see the preview will instantly recognize that. And we'll do the same thing with the header. And we're almost there. We got the visual look, but we still have the self-service text. So I'll just scroll down just a little bit. You can see the default is display self-service. Let's customize that, and magically, we have the text we want. You can change that to whatever you like. Acme Technologies and Employee Tools and Resources is what Drew had on the slide, so that's what we'll go with. I can click on Save, and let's go back to self-service, and get the instant refresh. We have our icon, our branding header, branding text. If you can look down here, we have our dock icon changed instantly as well. Yeah, go ahead. And one final thing, I click Login. We got our branding right here as well. And I'm going to go ahead and log in. And now the users, this is using the optional login. Obviously, this is depending on what you have your login settings set to. But I also see my own personal name here instead of my user ID too. That shows that I'm actually logged in now as me. So I'll take it back to Drew.
Perfect. Can we switch back to the keynote, please? Excellent. The next thing we want to touch on are some extra new features and enhancements, but being able to customize that end user experience. First, we want to start out with the global action button. It provides feedback on the state of an item before, during, and after execution of an item. Now we'll have that secondary action button that you may have heard in previous sessions for items that stay in self-service. Specifically for policies, With policies, you'll have a customizable secondary action button. So if an item does get installed or a policy does, it would flip to, by default, a reinstall button. But as an admin, you can go and change that. Some examples of if you want to have it as an upgrade, update, run it again, that type of thing. Some other examples is with apps and in-house ebooks. It can go from an install to an open button for them. Another thing is ebooks coming from the iBooks store. That actually flips to an iBooks button where it can take them to the iBooks store, and then they can open it up and find it there. These new button options are great because it allows the end user to actually understand what the state of an item is and if they need to take additional actions on them. Another part of it that has been touched earlier is the entire process of the item actually being installed. The user actually sees it right through the global action button. So you'll be able to see that the item is executing first, then finishing, and then done. And then again, if it stays in self-service, that secondary action button will flip. Here's an example of a policy. I actually modified the text to say update, it installed, and that's what the user will see. Some other enhancements we made that I've mentioned also before is with bookmarks. We changed the name from URL plugins, and we're using that. But the nice thing for the admin is that they can modify that name that is shown in self-service. So if bookmarks doesn't work for you, you could change it to websites, resources, or if you still like plugins, you can always switch it back. And also the third thing on there is you'll be able to scope bookmarks just the way you'd scope a policy. You'll also be able to utilize sites, so you can now specify which computers display a bookmark and then which users actually have access to them. So you can use videos, documentation, and actually get it out to their specific users you want to have that. And then just to touch on what Tim just showed previously is with the account button, it is customized to the user that is logged in. If there is a full name, self-service will pull that from Jamf Pro and display that. If a full name is not available, it will grab the username and show that instead. Another feature is item URLs. Previously, you might have been able to do it in the legacy self-service. There's a URL behind every action button. With the new app, that's not available, but what we did was we brought that functionality and put it into Jamf Pro. With these item URLs, there's 2 of them, and it's provided on the self-service tab of each item that you create. And then both URLs will give you the option to provide these URLs through emails or web pages for your end users to get content from self-service without actually being directly in self-service. As you can see at the bottom, the 2 options. The first one, it will actually install an item without initiating it in self-service. And then the other option is actually bringing that user to self-service to the description modal or pop-up of them, and then they can actually decide if they want to install it or not. And then one new feature that we added as well with 10 is actually one of the first questions I received last year at JNUC about, and it's the self-service display name. So admins will now have the flexibility when it comes to naming items made available in self-service with this new feature. So you'll be able, we created a new text field under the self-service tab for policies, config profiles, and in-house ebooks to be able to customize the item name that appears in self-service. So as an admin, you'll still be able to stay organized by naming the item that you want, and then you can flip over to the self-service tab for that item, modify that name, and that's what actually will show up for that user in self-service. So if we can, let's switch back over to Tim's computer so we can kind of show you some customization for the end user and make that personal experience.
Great. Like Drew said, we added lots of options to give you the customizability that you need. And we'll start with bookmarks. As Drew says, we've renamed plugins to bookmarks just because we think that better reflects what they actually do. Here I have 3 of them. I have an Apple, a Jamf, and an MBC. You can, as before, you can choose whether you want that to open within self-service or out on the default web browser. But let's say you don't like the name bookmarks. Let's say you actually want it to be websites. We'll go back to our self-service options. And this time, we'll be on the main config tab. And you can see we have a field now that says bookmarks display name. I can change that to whatever I like. Websites, if you really like plugins, you can change it back. And we come back, and we see that we'll refresh, and now your users will see websites. And that, again, that could be whatever you like. The next thing I'd like to show is, let's talk about, I have a policy here. that says do nothing at all. And this literally is a policy that does nothing at all. It's just a blank policy. Not very useful except for demos. First of all, we have a button that says install. Install is our default choice. Install will be the action before they run the policy the first time, and then reinstall is the default action for when they've already run the policy and might want to run it again. But in this case, we're doing nothing at all, so install is maybe not the best choice. So let's pop over to policies. I have a policy right here, do nothing at all. Edit. We'll go to Self-Service tab. You see right here, I have the button name before initiation and the button name after initiation. I'm free to put whatever I like there. Again, I don't think install is a very good choice, so I'm going to take that out. And let's just say do it. And after they've done it once, how about do it again? And now, we'll look at that in a second, but before we do, Drew mentioned the self-service display name. There's certain cases where you would want the policy named in Jamf Pro different than what your end users see. In Jamf Pro 9, those two were one and the same. You might want, your admin might have different types of policies for different types of users. For example, Firefox engineering versus Firefox HR or whatever. But you want the end user to just see Firefox and self-service. In this case, I have a policy called do nothing at all. Maybe the admin doesn't want people to know this is really doing nothing at all. Maybe they want something like solve all problems. And we'll save that. And we'll go back into self-service. And once that refreshes, whoops. Once that refreshes, we have our same policy here, the same icon and everything, but now the user sees solve all problems. Also notice the action button says do it, and I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. And this is going to go pretty fast, but I'm going to click on it. You'll see the executing, and it will think for a minute, and then it should say finishing, done. It'll pause for a second, and now we get our do it again. The final thing for this portion of my demo is Drew mentioned URL handlers. And I'd like to show you that right now. You go into the self-service tab of whatever content you want. And you scroll all the way to the bottom, you see policy URLs. In this case, it's a policy. Obviously, you can do that with any kind of content that can be in self-service. We have an installation URL and a description URL. If I copy the installation URL and give that to one of my users, they can click on that, and it'll take them right to self-service and run the action button as if they had clicked it in self-service. The description URL, on the other hand, it'll take them into self-service and pop up that info view, and they'll be able to read the description of the policy, and then they can choose to click that button themselves or not. So where that's useful is you may want to distribute policies by email, maybe a corporate wiki, or some other means where you just want to give your users like, hey, I want you to run this policy, click this link. All you would need to do is go in here for whatever policy you want or whatever content type you want, click copy on whichever of these you like, and I have this file here that's going to simulate an email. This might be something you would send out. Hi, Bob, here's the new self-service policy you might enjoy. Just click on this link. It'll bring up self-service for you. Then you can install it if you think you'd find it useful. Have fun. And I'll click on that, and the user can say, yep, allow that to come in self-service. If the app wasn't already launched, it would launch it. In my case, it just brought it up from the background, brings up this policy where they can now read about it, and right here with the action button, they can go ahead and execute it. So, take it back to Drew.
Perfect, thank you. Can we flip over to the other? Thank you. The next thing we want to talk about is another feature enhancement or improvements is the Jamf Self Service notifications. With the new app, you'll be able to support Apple push notifications as well as support software title update notifications or patch policies that are available. Also with that, notifications will be able, you'll be able to display them individually per content item. So that means not every item has to have a notification. You can choose which ones actually get it, as well as you'll be able to notify your end users when an item is added or as well as updated. And then you'll have the other option is to choose how that notification is displayed to them. One as a soft notification right in self-service, or a soft notification and the notification center. So just give you a quick little kind of a screenshot of what it would look like is the user for a soft notification, they'd be able to click in self-service on the notification icon, see that drop down. This is where they would see new and older notifications. If you hover over it, it will expand so they can read all the information available. Also to notice that we included the action button in there as well. So if they get it, they can install it right from the notification and they actually don't have to search through self-service to actually find that item. And then with regards to Apple push notifications, it would show up in the notification center. They'll be able to interact by it by clicking on it. It'll bring them into self-service to that description modal or pop-up of the item, and then they can decide if they would like to install it right from there as well. A couple other areas what we'd like to touch on are the other two dedicated tabs in the toolbar. Oop, it just closed. Bear with me. Can we flip back? We're going to ignore that. 1 second. Love live. Can we flip back to the keynote, please? Thank you. So here, yep, and advance. Yes, okay. I guess it doesn't want me to talk about history and updates. I'll try that one more time. Now we're going to ignore that. Hopefully we can get this to work. Can we try that one more time? Awesome. So here, just with the Updates tab, as mentioned before, it will support patch updates or patch policies that are available for the end user. So if you want to have the end user to take that user experience and be able to install patches that are available, they can do it right from self-service. Go to the Updates tab, that will be available there. Also the Updates icon, as well as the dock icon, gets badged with updates that are available for them, just to let them know that something is available. And also a quick plug for patch management. The session, they're having one on Thursday at 1:30, so if you want to have a little more deeper dive into that and learn a little bit more, please join them there. And then next, with the History tab, nice thing about this History tab, it is new. It has a total of kind of 3 functions underneath this one. The first 2 are that happen at the top. First, it displays the current item that is executing, as well as the second part is it is a queue for all items waiting to be executed. So if you have an end user that goes into self-service, installs multiple items at once or within a reasonable time, they can flip over to the history, see which one is installing now and which ones would be coming afterwards. And then after that, if you haven't guessed it yet, it does show a history list of all the items that have been installed by them in self-service. We also included the install date with that. And again, if the item stays in self-service, we do provide that secondary action button. So if they happen to look for something and they found that they have it here, they can actually open it up or rerun it right from the history section. To give a little bit of an idea of that, let's flip it over then to Tim's so we can see notifications in action as well as History tab.
All right, let's start with the History tab. As Drew said, this will show kind of a running log of everything that's happened on this device. And before we started, we just had these 3 things in the log, and then I ran that solve all problems, and now that's in the log. So it shows basically everything that happened, including what I just did. And as for notifications, we showed that a little bit earlier, but that should be pretty familiar if you've used Self-Service version 9 before. We're going to go back to our Self-Service tab on our friend, the Do Nothing at All policy. I'm going to go down to where it says Notification and Display Notifications. As Drew mentioned, Self-Service version 10 is Apple Push Service friendly, APNS. So you can choose whether you want the notifications to appear only in self-service via the notification bell icon or in both self-service and the notification center. And as before, you can give a subject, new policy available, spell, and some generic message. And I'm going to push it out to both, and we hit save. And this is some new options. You can choose if you want to notify people immediately, people that are already scoped to this policy. I can choose to not notify anybody right now. I can notify everyone, people who were scoped before and people who I may have I could have just changed scope right now. In this case, I didn't. Or the third option would be notify any new scope that just came in if I had changed scope right now. I'm going to go ahead and notify all. So I hit save. And if we're lucky, actually I think I have Do Not Disturb turned on. If we're lucky, that APNS will come through. Sometimes it takes a few minutes, so I won't make you wait for it. But what we will see is we have a little blinking blue dot on the notification bell, which means I have a new notification. And we'll see that new one just came through, new policy available. And again, we have this action button. We tried to put that in as many places as was convenient for the user. So they can look at that. They can click here and get information about it, or right from that view, they can get back there. Without even clicking on that, I can click the action button right there. It's going to go ahead and execute, and I'll turn your attention back to the history page. It's going to happen pretty quick, but it'll go to the top. In this case, it was already on the top, but if it was an older item, it would jump to the top. It's hard to see on the screen, but things that are currently executing or are queued for execution are a lighter white than these that are kind of a gray. You can tell it pretty distinctly on the actual computer. And that'll show the executing item, and it will then stay in your history because it was now already executed.
Perfect.
And that's all for that. We'll take it back to Drew.
Thank you. Awesome. A few extra things we want to talk about. One is localization. With the new self-service app, it will be localized in these 4 languages: English, French, German, and Japanese. And this will be for all the hard-coded text in the app itself. Also, if you haven't guessed it yet, but you want to know how to get the new self-service, it is available with the upgrade to Jamf Pro, which will be available next Tuesday for all computers or Macs running 10.10 or above. And also, please check out about Jamf Self Service for macOS section in the admin guide, where you can find more information about what we talked about today and a little more in depth. We also have a quick demonstration of how to customize the new self-service, some of the stuff that you saw today in a knowledge-based video called Customizing Self-Service for macOS using Jamf Pro, and that is on our Jamf YouTube channel. And then if you ever was wondering what was happening to that legacy self-service, it is still around. You can still use it. It will be available for computers on macOS 10.5 through 10.9. Again, we also have another KB article out there called Jamf Pro Compatibility Reference for macOS. And that'll just help you to understand how to download earlier versions of self-service, because you'll be able to gather those earlier ones through Jamf Pro and for manual installation, as well as give you the breakdown of how the levels of operating systems fit with the versions of self-service that are available as well. Just to give a little recap before we open it up for any questions, hopefully through today's session, you'll be able to see that with this better user experience, with this new UI, it will help the end users once this is in their hands. Being able to brand self-service to make it your organization's tool, and being able to do that actually right from Jamf Pro. Some of the customizations that we covered, knowing the state of an item with that global action button and seeing how that can be interactive for that end user, knowing what is available for them. The item URLs that you can grab from Jamf Pro, as well as the self-service display name, so you can help you stay organized as an admin, but also give a meaningful name for your end users in self-service. And then notifications, being able to support Apple push notifications, as well as what items get notifications and how the user is actually seeing them. And then with the dedicated updates tab and the history tab, again, updates is for patch policies, and then the history tab is for users to see exactly what they have installed and then know for future. And then again, the app being localized in the 4 languages as well. So hopefully you can see self-service is an incredible tool that allows people to be empowered and being able to use Apple technology to do that. So we can't wait for your end user to actually get access to this, so please upgrade to 10 as soon as it is available next Tuesday. And also, please come and check me out at the product management booth throughout the week, so any feedback you have or anything like that or questions for future stuff, I would love to talk and hear about that. Also, before I go, I can never forget a shout out to Team Thundersnow. They're the brains behind all the work that you've seen today. They've been working on this for the last 18 months, building this app from the ground up, and very excited to actually be able to ship this on the next Tuesday on the 31st. With that, thank you for joining us at JNUC. Feel free to reach out to me again this week. Love to hear your feedback. Sign up for future beta programs to see new features of self-service. We're going to continue to iterate on this and share your feedback on Jamf Nation. So thank you, and questions?
Yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much, Drew and Tim. Great stuff. So we got about 15 minutes left, so really great that we got some time for questions. We do have 2 microphones here in the center aisles, and you got to get close to it for us to hear that. Yeah, there's people lined up, so I don't even have to offer $10.
We should have talked longer.
Yeah, should have. So we'll just start here, sir. We'll start with you.
With the push notifications, do those only stay up for the system default duration, or are you able to set them to like a banner status so that they stay out of the notification center until they're interacted with? Or do they auto-dismiss and then people just forget about it forever?
The APNS notifications will be treated like all your other system ones. You'll see the banner if you're not in the app, and then they'll be in the notification center. But the ones that are in self-service will be there basically forever.
But I'm saying, so you can't have it be one of the ones that requires interaction before it dismisses itself? There's no override for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part of the question.
You can't make it so that it is one of the ones that needs a user interaction before it dismisses into the notification center.
It would give you button options.
Oh, yeah, so the alert there's
Yes.
a banner and then there's alert.
Yes.
Right now, it's kind of based on the user settings, so they can choose if they want to see the banner or the alert. With the interaction part, reaction for the 2, that's something that we're still working on and trying to look into to see if we can add that feature. But for right now, they'd just be able to click on it, bring them to self-service where they can decide if they want to install that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Now that I understood your question.
If we're using single sign-on for self-service, is there any changes to that?
Yeah, we integrated with single sign-on. So if you do decide to do that, that would be hooked right into this. So you won't see our authentication. It would go right to the SSO provider that you're using, go through that, and then bring them into self-service.
I have 2 questions, actually, and both are related to the kind of branding. So when the app crashed, it looked like when it was reopened that it had to re-pull the images and the custom branding. So it didn't seem like that was something that was saved to the app necessarily. So I can imagine, a user is off-site, maybe it's not talking to the Jamf Pro server. Is it still going to retain that custom branding? So that's question 1. Question 2 was when you clicked on that link, it said open self-service, so it didn't respect the Acme branding that you had put there. So I was curious if those were going to be things that would reflect the branding regardless.
Your first question, the branding is cached locally, so even if you're offline, you have to launch it the first time to pull the branding down the very first time, and after that it should have the branding come up the second time. I'm not sure what happened with that little snafu there, but that should come up with branding on subsequent launches. As for the self-service, that's something I'd actually have to look into. I did not even notice that.
Yeah, no, when you click that link in the email,
Right.
It said open self-service. So I
Right.
don't know where it pulls that information from to display that, but that was just.
I believe that's the app name that you can customize on the Jamf Pro as the self-service path. I believe if you had changed that there, I had left that the self-service. I believe if you changed it there, that name would change as well, but I would have to confirm that.
Yeah, so that we kind of modified the self-service object. So now we have 2 tabs. We have the configuration part and then the branding. If you go under the configuration, you can then change the app path, and then that's where you can modify your name. So if you decide to brand self-service on the branding tab, also remember go under the configuration part, change that branding, and then that name that you added there will show up like in the dock and stuff like that when you do the hover over and
That
stuff.
should all be tied together there, yeah.
All right, my question is regarding the policy URLs. So what if you have a policy that's scoped and a user out of that scope clicks the policy URL? What do they see?
So I believe, so if you're saying,
So
they
you-
got the
so if you
URL
scope
that
it-
fell
yeah,
out of
so
scope.
you scope an application, let's say.
With the
you
URLs
want-
you're specifically
I
asking?
want to install Tableau, let's say. That's a license that requires cost, and maybe there's some kind of gate for me to get through that, a directory service group, for instance. Have a policy scope to that. Somebody gets a hold of a URL that they open, but they don't have the smart
Right.
group scope to it. What do they see?
When you click on the URL, we recheck the scope, and if for some reason they have fallen out of scope, they would get a message that said, sorry, this policy is no longer in scope for you.
Okay. That might be, I'll fire a feature request, but that might be a good way to tell them how to get in scope, if that was a customizable thing.
Okay.
But, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have 2 questions. Are software titles that were installed by a policy, like a mandatory policy, also listed in the history tab, or is it just items that the users run in self-service?
For what would show up in the history? Yeah, so currently, anything that is under history is only for items that actually have been installed by the user through self-service.
Okay.
So if anything that has been installed automatically or whatever, that would not be shown there.
Okay.
Feature request though.
Cool. Second question, how does self-service decide when to display the alternate text for the button? So if we're preloading, say, Firefox on a system, does it know that Firefox is already installed there and thus show the alternate text? Or does somebody have to actually first run the policy and then it shows the alternate text?
In the case of Mac apps, we actually look to see if the app is on the system, and it would give the alternate text in that case. For things like policies, we look to see if it's been run in the past.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect.
So I got a couple questions here, but the first is the customization global or is it site specific, or can you have both?
For the branding,
Yes.
that is
targets.
just, for right now, it's global, so you can't do it per site.
Okay. One thing I noticed when you did the search is if I do a spotlight search, say on a Mac, the results come in under the categories. What I saw in the search and self-service is you had the bookmark in the application, but there's no delineation of which was which. Is that something, did I miss that, or?
No,
Okay.
right now, all the results will be displayed together. We do have plans to expand that, and it makes search more powerful, but this is kind of version 1 of it.
Okay. And then if somebody's installing from the install link that's provided via email, if it's something that requires authorization, does it skip the authorization screen?
No.
Or okay.
You would, again, if that were behind a user scope policy or whatnot, it would launch self-service. They would be given the opportunity to log in, and then it would run the
Okay.
policy. Yep.
And then the last question I have is the Remember Me checkbox. What's the default status of that? Is that default off or on?
It's defaulted on, but go under the configuration tab or whatever for the self-service object, and you can just turn that off if you don't need that.
Great. Thanks.
Yep.
This is really neat, but I'd love to know, what about iOS?
Oh, great question. Actually, after this, if you want to, you can go to the product management booth. I have a prototype of the iOS self-service that we're looking at of doing, and have a survey. So anyone interested in iOS, like to hear feedback. Also, yeah, we're looking into it. I have a little bit of a prototype of an idea, and your feedback would be much appreciated. Thanks. Yes. He's happy. That guy's.
I'm happy.
Yeah, I was actually just wondering about 508 compliance for persons with disability and whether it's compliant.
Yeah, so for 508, I think for our organization, we are looking into that.
Yeah, so this coming year, we'll be looking at all the gaps that we have in 508 compliance across all products, including self-service.
I guess, have you even started it? I mean, is it better than 9? Because 9 was not.
It is better than 9, yeah. There's more stuff that we naturally get out of the OS's compliance because it is a native OS app, but there's still maybe stuff that we have. Tim, you might know more specific areas that's different. I just know that most of our 508 compliance issues on the 9 series and before are because of that not being a native app, really rooted out of that. And so we naturally get a significant amount more compliant because of that alone.
Okay, great.
For the branding piece, if you upload a logo that has a transparent background, does that affect how it looks, or does it default like to a white background within Jamf?
Have you tried that? I believe you'll get the transparency. I don't know if I've ever actually tried that.
I mean, there were round logos.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
assumed.
Yeah.
I just wanted to confirm there wasn't some trickery going on.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Yep.
Great questions. Yeah, more.
Yeah, sorry.
Cool.
Sorry, uninstalling. So obviously from here, from the self-service, you can currently only run those policies and then do it again. What about, is there a thought to potentially include the option to uninstall or remove, or instead of having a secondary rerun again, only present the user with the option to uninstall so that they can only run a policy technically once?
Yeah, we actually on the backlog for this team is an option of looking into that, providing that ability to uninstall. It's something that the team would have to discuss and see what our capabilities will actually be, and if we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got 5 minutes left. If there's any questions, general comments, we got all kinds of stuff. Yeah, just to keep bouncing back and forth, we'll go over here, then we'll come back.
Yeah, just a question about the application titles in self-service. I think I noticed there was a character limit. So if you type one that's too long, you're going to get an ellipses. Is there a plan to show exactly what we type? Like, for example, Microsoft Office 2016. Like, that gets cut off?
Yeah, one thing was great with this beta program, we had, 1,000 customers actually in it, and we were able to get some feedback. Luckily, we were able to iterate on some of that. We did get a feedback about having that being cut off. So we actually made some adjustments for 10. So with this, if you extend out a little bit further, we extended the title to kind of go almost the width of the tile and also wrap it underneath. So you actually have 2 lines. And then if it's too long after that, I think we ended it with ellipses, I think. Right. But if it's still not enough room, we'd like to hear your feedback. But hopefully we expanded it far enough. And then maybe you guys can help and abbreviate some of it as well.
If it still gets cut off, you could always click on the info button or the icon and get the full title on the big modal that comes up there.
This is probably way farther away, but what about tvOS?
Self-service for tvOS?
Yes.
That's a great thing we should talk about.
I'll jot it down.
There's more and more stuff that's becoming available from the Apple side for managing tvOS, and as that expands, our desire to continue providing management of the platform of tvOS will also expand. So if there's specific use cases you or anybody has, we'd love to hear that stuff. tvOS has got great potential. I think it's figuring out what is it that you guys are hearing, like, well, if I could do this and make this, then this outcome could happen. We want to hear all about that stuff. And the addition of something like a self-service on tvOS is certainly in the running for that stuff. Yeah, great point, great question.
Just a quick question about, so I guess you guys call it a web app now. The web app, kind of the admin panel, at least every time I've used on previous versions of Jamf Pro, has been really, really hard to use in Safari. Characters kind of jumbled around and everything like that. Has there been any focus on, say, using it in a browser on a mobile device? The ability to, say, configure things in the web app?
So you're talking about actually managing or actually executing self-service from a browser?
Not actually self-service, but like if I want to, I get a message from a user who's like, hey, I need Office. So I open up JSS, I say, yep, I want them to have Office really, really hard on 9 in a browser.
You're talking about the Jamf Pro app itself, right?
Yeah, actually.
You want to talk to that? We've talked about that being a lot more responsive.
Yeah, so I don't know all the workflows and what is good, bad, or otherwise. So our primary focus for Jamf Pro version 10 on the web side, actually logging in and making changes was on the desktop. And then where can we make efficiencies and make things better on the mobile view? So the dashboards, the reporting, getting information out. So there are some things. One of the major overhauls that happened as a part of Jamf Pro 10 is to make, we called it componentizing. So I was explaining this earlier to some folks where scope in configuration profiles was a different web page than scope in policies, for example. So we made scope is scope is scope everywhere. So we have one thing to change. And so there are things that we've inherited as easier and better to use for self-service specifically. I don't know all the things that would be good, bad, or otherwise. And let us know what you see and that sort of thing. So,
sure. Okay.
I was asking before, I don't know that this is generally, you used to be able to log into self-service from a browser as a user. So if the app didn't work, you could use your browser. And I thought you guys were still doing that. And I haven't even thought about that since 7.3. So it's been a long time. Anyways,
okay,
yeah, great question. Thanks. Yeah, sorry. One last one, I think.
All right, so I have a question about the new self-service app. When you see like things from VPP, there's an open button, it looks like. It's things that come natively from Apple. Is that seems a little different with third-party stuff. So I was just wondering how that functionality worked, how the open, does it know the application?
Oh,
Or was that just like kind of placeholder in there for the open stuff? Like I
no,
saw-
for the open. So if it is an app coming from the App Store, or yeah, for an App Store, yeah, it would flip automatically to an open. And then I think from the system-wise, we can actually just open that application knowing that it's on the device.
Yeah, if the app's on the device, you can just click on in self-service to launch the app.
Okay.
Magic.
So we are at 3:30, so very helpful stuff. We will be up here if anybody has other questions about anything else going on. Let's give Drew and Tim another round of applause. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.